What's happening? Happy Monday to all of you. Thanks for joining me as always. Hope you enjoyed your bye week. Hope you enjoyed the long weekend. I went to Seinfeld on Saturday night at Foxwoods. It was a great show. Enjoyed myself and my wife alongside. Was a fantastic day. Was a great night. So hopefully you took this bye week to kind of decompress from watching bad football and do some other things with your life. And, of course, watching the NFL, which I did yesterday. So thanks for being back here on this Monday. Before we get into draft talk, I figured no game to recap. So why not look at the draft? I know a lot of people have been asking me questions about the draft, whether it's through the super chat or the comment section or on my Patreon. So I figured we'd talk draft today. But before we get to that, let's talk about somebody who the Patriots drafted in this past draft last April, and that's Caden Wallace. Update on Caden Wallace. He was at practice today. It's the first time that he was at practice since going on IR. That's all the way back to week 4. Pretty crazy. All the way back to week 4. He's missed almost his entire rookie season. He was back at practice today. So the Patriots have started the window. They've opened that window up. Now 21 days to make him active or not. Of course, you've got a month left of the season. I would have to imagine he is going to play. I don't know if it's going to be this weekend or if it's going to end up being next weekend, but you have to imagine he is going to play. The Patriots otherwise would not open up this window for him. So Caden Wallace back at practice. Hopefully that means we see Caden out there on Sunday against the Cardinals, because the Patriots now, as they get ready for this draft coming up in April, they have to evaluate what they have in that locker room. Jalen Polk, big month for him coming up. Javon Baker, big month coming up for him as well. Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson. These guys need to show. They need to prove that they should have a roster spot. Of course, Polk will have a roster spot next year. He was a second-round pick. You don't give up on a second-round pick after one season. Caden Wallace will have certainly have a locker room spot for him next year because he missed most of this year, but he's a third-round pick. And Layden Robinson has shown enough in run blocking where you give him a shot as well. But Javon Baker, some of these other guys, I mean, they have to prove their worth. And even if you're going to be on this team next year, Caden Wallace has the next month to prove if he could be a starting right tackle in 2025. Jalen Polk has to prove that he can be a number 3 receiver before we even get to talking about a number 2 receiver with how bad he's been this year up to this point. Javon Baker needs to prove he should be on this roster next year. So a lot to happen over this next month. The best news today, Caden Wallace back at practice. Hopefully we see him against Arizona. All right, let's get into the draft. It is early. It is early. We all understand it's early. You know it's early. I know it's early. We're talking December 9th. We still have 4.5 months until we get to the draft. But this is when we start to look at things. We start to look at positioning for the Patriots. We start to look at other teams. Are they sliding down? Are they going up? We also start to look at the college football playoff. This is the last chance for some of these top-tier players to prove themselves worthy of a first-round pick. So we start to really focus in on what these young men are doing, what they've done, and what we believe they could do at the next level. It's early, but Tankathon right now, if you go to Tankathon, the Patriots have the 3rd pick overall. So if the draft was tonight, the Patriots would be drafting number 3 overall. Now, with that said, there are a bunch of tiebreakers we don't have to get into right now, but there are a lot of tiebreakers. Strength of schedule means an awful lot when you look at how these teams are going to be slotted. The strength of schedule will continue to change over the next month as teams win and lose, right? A strength of schedule could get better. It could get worse. It depends on what those teams do over the final month. So there's still a lot to be decided when we talk about the top 10 in this draft, because unlike last year, there are a lot of bad football teams this year. There are a ton of teams who have 2 wins and 3 wins, and that's going to make it pretty difficult to say, oh, it's a definite that the Patriots are going to get a top 5 pick. I mean, for example, Patriots had 4 wins last year. They had the 3rd pick. 4 wins this year might give you the 7th, 8th, 9th pick in the draft. So this upcoming draft is going to be different than last year's draft because there is so much bad football compared to what those records were a year ago. We still have pro days to get through. We still have to get through the combine. But right now, I want to talk about draft strategy. If I'm sitting here on December 9th, which I am, speaking with all of you on this podcast, What am I looking at if I'm the Patriots? What am I planning on? What are certain strategies that I could use? Let's look at scenario number one. Scenario number one is that the Patriots end up with the top pick in the draft. Now, what are the percentages? What are the chances of the Patriots ending with the first pick? Aaron Schatz, he posted late last week going into this weekend's game. So heading into yesterday's games, the Patriots, according to Aaron Schatz, had the best percentage shot at getting the first pick in the draft. Schatz has it at 37.8%, and he says the Patriots have a 95.8% chance of landing a top 5 pick. If you want to know who's second, it's the Giants. The Giants have a 27.1% shot of hitting the first pick. So according to Aaron Schatz, he projects things, right? He's the guy that's behind DVOA. According to Schatz, the Patriots have more than a 10% better shot at landing the first pick overall than the Giants do. Austin Mock at The Athletic, he doesn't feel as bullish on the Patriots' chances of landing the number 1 pick. He has the Patriots' chances of landing that number 1 pick at 11%. Teams ahead of the Patriots, according to Mock, again at The Athletic, the Raiders have a 30% shot. The Giants have a 30% shot. The Jaguars have a 15% shot. Now, of course, this was before yesterday's games. The Jaguars won. They beat Tennessee. So that is certainly going to change those percentages from Mock. Seth Walder at ESPN posted this yesterday. The Giants have a 40% shot at the first pick. Walder at ESPN has the Patriots with the second best chance at landing the number 1 pick at 21.4%. And according to Walder, the Patriots have an 83.2% shot at a top 5 pick. So right now, the projections would tell you the Patriots are in a fantastic position to land a top 5 pick. They also have a pretty good shot at landing the number 1 overall pick. If I was to tell you how I feel right now, I don't think the Patriots end up with the number 1 pick. I think the Giants or the Raiders end up with that pick. I think the Giants and the Raiders finish at 1 and 2, respectively. I think the Patriots are going to be looking at the 3rd pick to like the 7th or 8th pick, depending on what they do the rest of this year. I don't think they're going to leapfrog the Raiders. I don't think they're going to leapfrog the Giants. I think those two teams are even worse than what the Patriots have been. So I do not anticipate the Patriots getting that top pick. But let's say they do. Scenario number 1. The Patriots have the first pick in the draft in April. I ask you, throw a comment in. What do you do if you're the Patriots? You have the number 1 pick. What would you want the Patriots to do? They land number 1. Do you want them to stick and pick? Do you want them to trade down? What do you want the Patriots to do if they get that first pick? My first option would be to trade down. If I'm the Patriots and I have that top pick in the draft, the first thing I'm looking at is trading down. I'm calling other teams. I'm asking what they're looking for. I'm trying to figure out what kind of trade package I can get for that number 1 pick. Many people think it could be a quote-unquote haul. I'm not so, sold on that, because if you look at things, the Giants, the Raiders, you look at this quarterback class, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I don't know if people are going to be as motivated to move up as they were last year, for example, because last year's quarterback class was loaded. But the first thing I'm doing if I'm Elliott Wolf, if I get that first pick, I'm trying to figure out what I can get from other teams. Is it worth me moving down? Is it worth me trading that top pick? How many teams need quarterbacks? That's the first question. How many teams do you think need quarterbacks? Here's my list. Definitely need a quarterback. Giants, Raiders. So if they finish as bad as they look like they're going to finish and they have a top 2 pick, you can expect quarterback at the top of the draft. That's what I would think right now. Again, December 9th, still lots of time. But if the Giants and the Raiders are 1-2, I think you see quarterback, because those organizations are so thirsty for a young franchise quarterback. Other teams that could be looking at a quarterback, the Cleveland Browns. Are the Browns happy with Jameis Winston? Do they want to move on from Jameis Winston? Do they see Winston as the quote-unquote bridge quarterback? You can look at the Saints. Derek Carr, hurt. Looks like he broke his left hand. Derek Carr probably done for the rest of the year. I don't think the Saints are going to want to, hitch their wagon, so to speak, to Derek Carr. So I think the Saints could be interested in a quarterback and talk and pick up that phone when the Patriots call. The Jets, what do the Jets do? Do they hang on to Aaron Rodgers? Do they try to get rid of Rodgers? Do they hold on to Rodgers and draft a young quarterback? What do the Jets do? What do the Steelers do? And the Steelers are one of the best teams in the AFC. But will they look towards the future, or will they believe in Russell Wilson and sign him to a long-term contract extension? So right now, to me, the teams definitely looking at quarterback are the Giants and the Raiders. The maybes are the Browns, the Saints, the Jets, and the Steelers. Which brings us to, what does the quarterback talent look like in the draft this year? Dane Brugler from The Athletic wrote this recently. Some NFL scouts believe one or two quarterbacks are deserving of this year's first round, while others think drafting any quarterback in round one would be a mistake. A comment from one AFC scout, quote, "Man, I feel bad for the teams trying to find one quarterback in this group," unquote. So according to Dane Brugler, within the NFL circles, within scouting circles, they don't like this quarterback class. They think it might be a reach to say even one of these guys is going to be good. Now, I've seen Cam Ward play a couple of games. I've seen Shedeur Sanders play a handful of games. I'm not in a position to sit here and tell you that those guys are going to be NFL quarterbacks or franchise quarterbacks, right? But according to Brugler, the NFL opinion is that this quarterback class is way weaker than last year. And that Sanders and Ward, some believe, are first-round picks, but some believe they shouldn't even be drafted in the first round. So that's the backdrop, right? How many teams need quarterbacks? How do those teams feel about the quarterbacks that are going to be available? And do those teams feel so good about one of these quarterbacks that they're willing to move up to number one overall and draft that quarterback and give the Patriots what they want if the Pats have that first pick? Let's look at what you would do. Greg Field says, first overall pick, he likes Travis Hunter. Matthew Jackson jumps in, says, trade down for sure. If someone is willing to give a second this year and a fifth, sixth, I'm moving down. David jumps in, says Travis Hunter. So another person for Travis Hunter. So keep telling me what you would do if you had that number one pick. If you had that number one pick overall, you're the Patriots, what do? The first option, I'm looking to trade down. Now, here's a caveat. If I'm the Patriots, I'm not willing to trade down further than, let's say, pick 4, right? Because if I'm the Patriots, I'm looking at the two quarterbacks. If I think Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are going to get drafted in the top 4 or 5, right? If I think those two guys are going to get drafted, if I'm looking at the Giants and the Raiders, if they end up 1 and 2, then you know quarterback, and you're probably going to stick and pick. But if you're looking at trading down for one of those teams to move up to draft a quarterback, you don't want to drop too far down because the Patriots, they need a stud. They need a blue chip guy. So if I'm the Patriots, I don't want to move down beyond 4 because if I look at it and I say Ward and Sanders are going to go in the top 4, that leaves me with 2 guys. And the 2 guys that I'm looking at right now on December 9th at 3:13 Eastern Time, 2024, the 2 guys I'm looking at right now, Travis Hunter and Will Campbell. Those are the 2 guys right now that if I'm the Patriots that I'm looking at, because not only are they 2 of the most talented cats in this draft, they also fit a need. Hunter fits 2 needs, depending on where he's going to play, how much he's going to play. More on that in a minute. But Travis Hunter, wide receiver / cornerback, extremely talented, could be the most talented player in this entire draft. Also fitting a need, if not 2 needs. Will Campbell, right now plays tackle for LSU. Has had a tremendous career at LSU. Is he a tackle? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But if I'm Elliott Wolf and I believe that Travis Hunter and Will Campbell, they're going to be there in the top 4. Because I'm going to sit there and I'm going to say to myself, the top 2 picks are going to be quarterbacks. If that's the case, they don't even have to be the top 2 picks. If I think 2 of the top 4 picks are going to be quarterbacks, that gives me a chance if I stay in that top 4 to draft Travis Hunter or Will Campbell. And I think if I'm the Patriots, I wouldn't mind either of those guys. Now, if I'm the Pats and I have the first pick in the draft, and nobody wants to trade with me. Teams aren't necessarily in love with the quarterbacks. Or you've got the Patriots at number 1, and then the Giants and the Raiders, and the Giants and Raiders say, we ain't moving up because nobody else is going to give you enough to drop down far for you to give up the number 1 pick. So we're not going to deal with you. We're going to sit here at 2 and 3. Now, maybe the Raiders or the Giants like one of the two quarterbacks much more than the other. Then they might be willing to move up to take that number 1 pick from you. But let's just say, for argument's sake, you have the number 1 pick and you can't trade down. Trading down is not an option, either for 2 reasons. Number 1, nobody's willing to give you enough in return for the pick. Or number 2, you would drop down way too far if you traded that first pick overall. So let's say the Patriots are sitting there with the number 1 pick. What would you do? If you couldn't trade that pick, who are you drafting? I would go with Hunter. I would pick Travis Hunter right now because he fills, let me say this, 1.5 needs. I don't know if he's going to be a receiver more than a cornerback or a cornerback more than a receiver. I would imagine that Hunter is most likely going to want to play wide receiver because wide receivers make much more money than corners. So I think that Hunter will want to devote most of his time to playing wide receiver. But even if that's the case, you draft a guy at a position of need. He's the most talented player in the draft, and you can put him at wide receiver. He's not necessarily an X wide receiver. That's one thing. You'd still have to go out there and acquire an X wide receiver, but you would have somebody who can play all over the line of scrimmage at that position, is just a tremendous athlete, has great hands, and you could play. What you could do is you could play, for the vast majority of the time, you could play Travis Hunter at wide receiver, but you can play him situationally at cornerback. What do I mean by that? He's an outside corner. So if you had Christian Gonzalez and Travis Hunter, let's say on 3rd downs, if it's 3rd and medium or 3rd and long, you put Hunter and Gonzalez out there on the field at the outside corner spots, and now those offenses are going to have a hell of a time converting those 3rd downs. If you're in the red zone, maybe you put Travis Hunter out there at cornerback in the red zone because thinking it's going to condense the field. You have 2 shutdown corners out there. Now you make it even more difficult for the offense. So right now, again, December 9th, if I was to pick at number 1, I'm picking Travis Hunter, and I think he's going to want to play wide receiver. All right, other scenarios to get to, but first, a couple things you can do for us here at the channel to help build this channel. You can click that thumbs up button on the YouTube page right there. YouTube channel, you can click that thumbs up. More thumbs up means more eyeballs. That's how we drive traffic. That's how we give the stiff arm to YouTube. So don't forget to click that thumbs up button. Don't forget to comment. What would you do in the draft if you had the number 1 pick and you couldn't trade down? Don't forget to throw a comment in there because comments help us beat that algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe. We are far away from our goal, but we're still pushing towards it. We want to hit 5,500 subscribers. I'm hoping by the new year. Pretty unlikely, but who knows? Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You can also rate and review at Spotify and Apple Pods. All right, let's get to scenario number 2. So let's say the Patriots don't get the number 1 pick. Let's say the Patriots get the number 2 pick. What would you do with the number 2 pick? I would have the same approach as the number 1 pick. I would look to trade down, but I don't want to trade down too far, and I have to know what I'm getting in return. Because with the second pick, you might get less offered to you, right? For obvious reasons. The second pick is less valuable than the first pick. Captain Obvious just walked into the room and said hello. So if I have the second pick, I'm still picking up the phone. I'm still seeing if I can move down. But does it make sense for me to move down? I don't know. Depends on what those other teams are offering. Scenario number 3. You don't get the first pick. You don't get the second pick. And I think this is the most likely scenario right now. I think the Giants and the Raiders are more likely going to end up at 1 and 2, whichever order it's going to be. I think you're more likely of getting a pick somewhere between that number 3 spot and number 5 spot. If I'm sitting at that number 3 to 5 spot and I'm the Patriots, I'm likely going to stick and pick because I don't want to drop down too far. I want to draft. If I'm the Patriots, the best scenario in the world is that I get an incredible offer for the number 1 pick I drop down a couple of spots. I still draft Hunter or Campbell. Maybe you like Banks. Maybe you like one of the defensive players we'll talk about in a few minutes. But you trade down, you land yourself a blue chip talent, and you get a bunch of draft capital to fill other holes on your team. That's the perfect scenario. If you don't do that, I don't think you want to drop below 5, because this is a very top-heavy draft, and there are some disagreements about how that top-heavy really is. Is it top-heavy? And how heavy is the top? Does it go 5 deep? Does it go 10 deep? Does it go 15 deep? The Patriots need blue-chip players, man. They need top-tier talent. And so if I got the 3rd pick or the 4th pick or the 5th pick, moving down, to me, it doesn't do me enough. Unless it's like some crazy trade offer, which I don't see happening. I would rather stick and pick and walk out with the top 5 pick in this draft, feeling like I added a blue chip talent in the first round. You had Drake May this past year. You add another blue chip guy in the top 5 in April. And you say to yourself, well, at least I added a legitimate building block. Because when you look at this, when you look at the blue chip prospects, here's the thing. There aren't a lot of guys on this board that people love. Here's what Dane Brugler wrote about the draft, again, from The Athletic. Outside of Travis Hunter, there is very little consensus about the non-quarterbacks at the top of this draft. An AFC scout told The Athletic, quote, Hunter is the only guy this year who would have been a top 10 pick last year, probably in most years. So an AFC scout tells Dane Brugler, Travis Hunter is the only guy that is likely to be drafted in the top 10 in April that would have been drafted in the top 10 in this past draft. So you would take all 10 of those top 10 picks from this past draft, and you would slot them ahead of anybody in this draft except for maybe Travis Hunter. That's according to an AFC scout. So if you have a shot to land a blue chip guy in this draft, because this draft isn't very rich with those kinds of guys, according to scouts, experts, pundits, if you have an opportunity to draft a truly blue chip kind of guy, then you stick and pick. If you're sitting there between 3 and 5, don't get cute, stick and pick, land one of the best prospects in this draft. You mess around and you might hurt yourself. All right, there's another scenario that I'll get to in a minute. But first, Kyle Kirk jumps in with a super chat. Will Campbell, if we could land T and or trade for DK. Tet McMillan, his size is superb. He's the best wide receiver in my opinion. I'd rather spend the pick on left tackle and the money on wide receiver, but it's really early and free agency will dictate that. Yes, it is really early, and you got to see, who re-signs. I know the Jaguars just sign their left tackle to an extension. He was set to hit free agency. So now he's off the board. So these things are fluid. They can change throughout time. I saw my buddy Evan Lazar say that he believes Tet McMillan from Arizona, he's like 6'5", he's big wide receiver, really good talent. But Lazar said that he would have Tet McMillan ranked 5th in last year's draft out of wide receivers. So if you're trying to figure out at home or at work, wherever you are, the difference between the talent of this past draft and the upcoming draft, you look at somebody like wide receiver, and Evan Lazar would tell you he would slot McMillan as 5th in last year's wide receiver class. So somewhere around Brian Thomas. Tet McMillan is not Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not Malik Neighbors. He's not Roma Dunze. He might not even be Brian Thomas. So you would likely slot him, if he was drafted last year, mid to late first round. This year, Tet McMillan might end up going in the top 5 to 10. So that's the difference between the two drafts. Kyle, thank you for the $10 super chat. It is very much appreciated. You can send those super chats to get your questions or your comments to the front of the line. All right, here's another scenario. What if the Patriots end up with the 6th pick or lower? This is a scenario that I do not want to entertain. I hope the Patriots end up with a top 5 pick, right? Or they trade down and they stay within the top 5. If you get a 6th pick or later scenario, It's scary. It's scary because we just saw what happened with Elliott Wolf this last draft. You're not feeling great about that draft class aside from Drake May, right? Now, I think we still have a lot of time to figure out how good that draft class truly is going to be. If Caden Wallace proves to be a starting right tackle and you hit on May and Wallace, 2 out of your top 3 picks, you feel different about that draft. If Jalen Polk shows life over the final month and proves to be a good 2 or 3 receiver, then you could live with that. You just don't want Tyquan Thornton to play out again. So we still got time, but right now we know what we know, and you can only go off what you can go off of, right? And right now we know that Drake May looks like a hit, and everybody else in that draft class is a big fat question mark. And so this is the difficulty looking at the draft in April, because you have a draft that is going to be the beauty is in the eye of beholder kind of thing, right? This is not going to be the kind of draft where people are looking at it and saying, oh, that guy's number 1. These guys are going to be studs. It's a very different draft. So when you land in the 6th spot or later, if you're the Patriots and you end up with the 6th pick, the 7th pick, the 8th pick, we're talking about Elliott Wolf's draft board. And given what we saw in 2024, I don't think any of us feel great about Elliott Wolf's draft board going into this draft. Now, we should also bring up that Elliott Wolf changed the entire scouting system last year. There was a lot of turnover, so maybe they have things a little bit more streamlined. They bring more people into the front office that they trust. But right now, we only know what we know, and that's this past draft wasn't good so far. And if you get a 6th pick, 7th pick, 8th pick, you're going to be relying on Elliott Wolf's board. Why is that? Well, let's go back to Dane Brugler. Dane Brugler from The Athletic. He wrote this, not to be a buzzkill, but rather as a reminder to keep an open mind with this year's first round. One team's number 2 prospect might be another team's number 15. The polarizing nature of this year's draft will make it interesting. Embrace it now. So what Brugler is saying is that this draft, you're not going to have a lot of universal guys in the top 10. You're not going to go from like Mel Kiper to Brugler to all of these experts, Todd McShay. You're not going to get a lot of agreement on who a top 10 prospect is in this draft. This draft is going to depend on teams' draft boards. Yeah, you know what? That team might think that Tet McMillan is the 17th best prospect in this draft. But this team might believe that Tet McMillan is the 6th best prospect in this draft. There's not going to be a lot of agreement on players and their talent and where they should end up. So you're going to end up depending on your team's scouting department, your team's draft board, because the beauty is going to be in the eye of the beholder. It's not going to be a situation where everybody sits there and goes, oh, draft that guy. That's got to be the guy. That's not this kind of draft. So I think we're going to see a lot of, he got picked where? That guy got drafted by who? How in the world did that dude get drafted at that spot? What in the world was that team thinking? This draft is going to be perfect for these draft night pundits to just rip teams apart if they want to. This is one of those drafts where, Mel Kiper might have somebody ranked in his top 5. The guy gets drafted like 28th or 30th or in the 2nd round. As of right now, what we know about this class. So it's going to be a lot of, wow, he went there. Why did that team pick that dude? What did they see in that guy? I didn't think he should have been a 1st-round pick. I thought that guy was a 2nd-round pick. I thought that guy was a 3rd-round pick. Get ready for that is what Dane Brugler is telling us. Embrace the idea that a lot of these prospects are not universally loved. So your team might love a guy that you hate. Now, that happens in a lot of drafts, right? But this one is going to be extra polarizing than some of the drafts we've seen recently. So the question is, how many blue chip guys are on the Patriots draft board? It's a huge question. If the NFL says, let's just say the NFL as a whole, scouts, front office guys, right? GMs, president of football operations, let's say as a whole, the NFL thinks that there's like 6 blue chip guys in this draft. Does Elliott Wolf believe that? Does Elliott Wolf think that there's 1 blue chip guy, 2 blue chip guys? Does Elliott Wolf think there might be 10? Maybe Elliott Wolf thinks there's more blue chip guys than the rest of the league believes. Maybe Elliott Wolf's right. Maybe he's wrong. But when you talk about subjectivity, and we all have subjectivity, every draft is about subjectivity. But this draft specifically in April might be loaded with subjectivity. President of football operations might think this guy's a top 5 prospect. The rest of the league doesn't think he should be drafted in the top 15. That guy goes in the top 5. Good luck to that president of football operations. So how many blue chip guys are on the Patriots board? Because if the Patriots only have 1 guy, let's say that Elliott Wolf, here's a hypothetical. Elliott Wolf has Travis Hunter, right? Wolf looks at Travis Hunter and he says, he's the only blue chip guy in this draft. Then Elliott Wolf might be more inclined to stay at number 1 and not even entertain trading down, because if he thinks Travis Hunter is the only blue chip prospect in this draft, then he's going to draft that guy at number 1. He's going to say, we took the best player available. We took the most talented guy. We took a blue chip stud. But if Elliott Wolf has 5 or 6 or 7 blue chip guys, then he's entertaining the trade ideas. And then he's more open to trading down to 5, 6, 7, because in his mind, he's going to be guaranteed one of those blue chip prospects. So we look at board, we look at, evaluation of talent. Let's jump to Chris Chapman. $20 super chat. Thank you, Chris. Nick, to ask what we were saying in the comments, do you trust Wolf to trade back? And what do you really think of our scouting department? Look, I don't think Wolf gets the benefit of the doubt in any kind of way at this point going into the draft. Now, we still have a month to play. If Jalen Polk catches 20 to 25 footballs over the next month, I think all of us would feel much better about Jalen Polk going into 2025. I don't anticipate that happening. So we're going to be looking at Jalen Polk as, man, oh man, that was a rookie busted year for their 2nd round pick. And they traded down to land Polk, and they could have had Ladd McConkey, and they could have had this guy, and they could have had that guy. So right now, Elliott Wolf does not deserve the benefit of the doubt. I gave him the benefit of the doubt before the last draft because it's the first draft that he ran. But right now, he doesn't deserve that benefit. So all eyes on Wolf this offseason, not just the draft, but free agency. He has to hit a home run in this offseason, because if he doesn't, he's gone. So I would not be trusting Elliott Wolf to do much of anything going into the draft. Doesn't mean he won't do something correct. He might just absolutely slay this draft. And maybe a month from now, Javon Baker gets on the field, makes a couple of plays, and Polk makes some plays, and Caden Wallace proves to be a starting right tackle. Again, those things to me right now are unlikely, but they're not impossible. If some of those guys start to show that, then you go into this draft feeling better. But if at the end of the year, these rookies, this class looks exactly the way it's looked through the first 13 games, then there's no benefit of the doubt for Elliott Wolf. He's got to do it right. And I don't think many people are going to feel like he's capable of doing it right until he proves that he can do it right. The scouting department, I think Elliott Wolf has a great reputation throughout the game. Doesn't mean he's going to succeed. A lot of these guys in this front office have really good reputations, but those reputations are on the line. They're on the line this offseason. There's no more screwing around. It's put up or shut up. I gave this front office, I said this when these guys were brought in or promoted. I said it then, and I'll say it now. You got 2 off seasons because you inherited a debacle. It was a disaster of a roster, especially on the offensive side, that you inherited. So I'm giving you 2 off seasons to get this roster heading into the right direction. This is off season 2. If you swing and miss, you're done. You're gone. Thank you, Chris, for the 20. It is much appreciated. Let's jump to Greg Fields with a super chat. I'll get back to the draft talk in a minute. Draft talk super chat. Sorry it has to come to this, but the Patriots need help almost everywhere. Yes. Yeah. I mean, let's go through it, right? Wide receiver, obvious. Tackle. You can look at defense and you can say, well, they need an edge, if not 2 guys that can play the edge. They need an interior defensive lineman to go along with Christian Barmore. They need athleticism and more explosion at the second level at linebacker. They could certainly use a safety that has more talent than what they have right now. Given what you've seen from Kyle Duggar, you could go a little bit, towards the safety side of things. They have a bunch of holes. And then you're not even accounting for guys that are on the last year of their deals, right? I mean, is Jaheim Bell going to be ready to step in and be a full-time tight end next year? If not, Austin Hooper's on a one-year deal. Do you bring Hooper back? Do you not bring him back? Antonio Gibson is on a one-year deal. Do you bring Gibson back? I mean, if I'm the Patriots, I'm looking to bring both those guys back because they've been good. But yeah, there's a lot of holes, and there's a lot of guys coming up on contracts. Thank you, Greg, for the 10. Vitalix jumps in with a super chat. I say take Carter. Got to be talking about Abdul. Talk about him in a minute. Need a game record on defense, and May covers up a lot of warts on offense. O-line and second, maybe 2 a Judon pick, sign a receiver. See what happens with Polk and Baker. Cheers. Cheers, Vitalix. Thank you for the 10. There's a lot there. First of all, we all feel good about May as of right now, right? I don't think any of us are feeling bad about Drake May from what we've seen. Carter is an edge, so it makes sense. Not against it. You need an edge. It's clear that you need another edge defender, if not 2 of them. So I would be all for that. Offensive line, I think offensive tackle, I have like a hair. It's like a hair on my nose. It's driving me crazy. Sorry. Offensive tackle to me is a pretty huge need, gigantic need. And wide receiver. If I was to list them, I would say tackle, receiver, edge. Those would be my top 3. Appreciate the 10, Vitalix. All right. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Those things don't cost you any money. They don't take much time, but they help us tremendously. Like, comment, subscribe. That's how we beat that YouTube algorithm. Help us out. Build this channel more. All right. Let's get to scenario number 5. You don't get Campbell. You don't get Hunter. What do? Don't be shocked that the Patriots go defense in the first round. And I would not be surprised if they went defense in the first round whatsoever. If you can't get Campbell, you can't get Hunter. There are, as we just covered, some big-time defensive needs. You need an edge. Cornerback is not even one I brought up. Outside corner 2. We all love Christian Gonzalez, but does Alex Austin prove himself over the final month of this season? If he doesn't, then you're looking at an outside cornerback 2. You're looking at safety. Can Del Pettis step up, the undrafted free agent? Do you feel good about him? If you feel good about him, then you might not need a safety as much as we think you do, but maybe you do, maybe you don't. Interior defensive line. There's just a lot of holes. And interestingly enough, Mike Reese wrote this recently. Field Yates unveiled an updated top 25 prospects ranking. This is back on November 29th. So Field Yates released his top 25 prospects. 4 of the top 5 prospects, according to Field Yates, play defense. And that assumes that Travis Hunter will be viewed as a wide receiver. And Reese wrote this, that it sparks a Patriots-based question despite top needs at left tackle and receiver, which we just mentioned. Would the Patriots be reaching for need with a top 5 pick and be better served picking a defender? If Hunter is there, I don't think it's reaching. If Campbell is there and his arm length is not an issue, then I don't think it's reaching. But if you don't get Campbell, you don't get Hunter. Maybe you throw Kelvin Banks in there, left tackle at Texas. Some believe that he's going to be a guard. Some believe Campbell is going to be a guard. So if you don't like Banks, if you don't think Campbell's measurements are good enough to play tackle at the NFL level, and Travis Hunter's off the board, yeah, I'm looking defense. I would be looking defense. I would not be reaching for need. Tet McMillan. If I don't absolutely love Tet McMillan, and I don't believe that McMillan, if I'm Elliott Wolf and I'm the scouting department and I don't believe McMillan is going to be a number 1 wide receiver, I sure as hell am not reaching in the top 5 or 6 to draft Tet McMillan. I'm going to defense and saying, all right, who's on my board? Who's a blue chip guy? I don't care where they play, but draft that guy. If it's defense, cool, because the stud is the priority. You want to draft a stud. End of story. You don't want to draft a pretty good offensive player and bypass a possibly great defensive player. That makes no sense. The number one priority for you in this upcoming draft is to find a stud. As soon as you start reaching, that's when you get into big mistakes. You can make mistakes anyway. Jalen Polk was not a big reach. A lot of people thought Jalen Polk got drafted exactly where he should have been drafted. He could end up being a mistake. But you tend to make more mistakes when you reach more often than not. All right, what are the experts saying? If Campbell passes the arm length test, what's the arm length test? 33 inches. 33 inches. Rashawn Slater for the Chargers. Damn good tackle. In the past, it was always about 34-inch arms in length. If you had 34-inch arms or longer, NFL evaluators said to themselves, that guy's an NFL tackle. If your arm length was below 34, many evaluators would say that guy is not an NFL tackle. Rashawn Slater kind of changed that because Rashawn Slater has 33-inch arms, and he's been excellent. So if Will Campbell is at 33 inches or above, then he's going to be deemed a tackle. And if he's deemed a tackle, he's going to be seen as one of the best players in this draft. So if Campbell passes that arm length test, you draft him and you feel great as a tackle. Doesn't mean he doesn't mean he's not going to work out as a tackle if he has slightly shorter arms than 33 inches. If you don't have Hunter, if there's no Hunter, there's no Will Campbell, or if you believe that Kelvin Banks is going to play guard at the NFL, I'm looking at defense. That's what I'm doing personally. If I don't feel like, Campbell's there and Hunter's not there, those guys aren't there, and I'm not in love with the idea of Kelvin Banks playing tackle, I'm looking at defense. What do these experts have? Dane Brugler. Again, the Patriots are picking at number 4 at the time. They are now currently 3rd in the order. But at 4, Brugler had the Patriots drafting Will Campbell. And he wrote about Campbell, if the organization invests in a wide receiver via free agency, its draft focus would shift to the O-line. Despite average arm length, Campbell moves with fluidity and strength and projects as an immediate NFL starter at tackle, guard, or even center. Again, with Campbell, the positional evaluation matters a lot. Because if you think he's a guard, you might not be willing to draft him in the top 5, right? Probably not. If you think he's a tackle, top 5 doesn't sound too bad. Danny Kelly of The Ringer, his mock draft had the Patriots also drafting Will Campbell at number 4. Kelly wrote, Campbell is a smooth mover who plays with good balance and strong hands. He's got multiple years of experience playing at tackle. Could be New England starter on either the left or the right side for the long term, but also has the demeanor to play guard if the Patriots need him there early on. Pro Football Focus, Trevor Sikma has the Patriots drafting Tet McMillan from Arizona. Sikma wrote, this pick might be surprising since it's not an offensive lineman, but the Patriots have the financial flexibility to address the O-line with quality veterans and free agency. That could allow them to prioritize a high-ceiling pass catcher like Tet McMillan. We told you he's 6'6", 210 pounds. Trevor Sikma from Pro Football Focus compares him to Mike Evans and Drake London. Okay, well, if you're drafting Mike Evans in the top 5 or 6, you don't feel bad. If you're drafting Drake London in the top 5 or 6, that is a disaster. So would Elliott Wolf think that Tet is more like Mike Evans, or would Elliott Wolf look at Tet and say he's more like Drake London? Pro Football Focus, if you're wondering, their first offensive tackle off the board is Kelvin Banks at number 7 to Tennessee. Campbell goes number 8 to Cleveland. But if I can't land Hunter, if I can't land Campbell, if I think Kelvin Banks is a guard, I'm looking defense. Abdul Carter, defensive end, Penn State, terrific player, brought up in the comments section today. Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan, hell of a football player. Will Johnson, best cornerback in the country, shutdown guy from Michigan. I'm looking at him. Malachi Starks, somebody that is a safety at Georgia. He's another guy that you're going to hear about. James Pierce, defensive end from Tennessee. So, you look at it, Field Yates has Carter second out of his top 5 defenders in this class. Actually, he has him number 1, but number 2 overall. Field Yates has Mason Graham as the 3rd best prospect in this draft, 2nd best defender. Then he has Will Johnson as the 4th best prospect in this draft, 3rd best defender. Malachi, 5th overall, 4th best defender. And James Pierce, 7th overall and 5th best defensive prospect. So Field Yates, if you look at his top 5, it's the number 2 prospect, 3, 4, 5, and 7 prospects overall. If you're wondering, Field Yates has Kelvin Banks as his 6th prospect, sliding in between Malachi and James Pierce there, safety and defensive end. He has Will Campbell as his 12th best prospect in this draft. A lot of time to change those. But yes, if I'm the Patriots, no Hunter, no Campbell, if Banks looks like an offensive guard to me, then I'm looking at Abdul Carter. I'm looking at Mason Graham. I'm looking at Will Johnson. I'm looking at those top-tier defenders who could be blue-chip guys. Also, let's not overlook free agency. I think it was my buddy Kyle who brought it up. Somebody brought it up. Free agency could be huge. This left tackle class actually does have some names in it. I'm interested in Wills out of Cleveland. He's had a bad year. He's been banged up, but he's still in his mid-20s. Very talented guy. Obviously worked with Scott Peters and worked with Alex Van Pelt in Cleveland. So that's a name I'd pay attention to. Ronnie Stanley, if he walks into free agency. The Ravens tackle, he's been very good throughout his career. He is a free agent currently. Garrett Bowles in Denver. Yes, he's in his early 30s, but he's a guy that you could land for a couple of years, 3-4 years, and he could be somebody who slides right in. At wide receiver, you got T. Higgins. So free agency is going to impact what you do in the draft. If you land T. Higgins, unless it's Travis Hunter, I find it very difficult to believe that the Patriots would spend a first-round pick on a wide receiver if they go out and they spend money on T. Higgins. If they go out and they sign Ronnie Stanley or Bowles, they might be much more open to drafting a defender instead of drafting Campbell or Banks. So free agency is going to play a huge role. All right, our friend Terry is back with it with another unbelievable super chat, a $50 super chat. Thank you, Terry. Not good with draft talk. My super chat is to be happy about the Jets losing again. Also would check out the Simpsons Fun Day broadcast tonight. Yeah, the Jets are in all sorts of hurt. They found ways to lose that game yesterday against Miami. I was watching the Red Zone channel. My freaking goodness. They completely mismanaged the clock. They allowed for a big special teams return. It was just a mess. They forgot to cover Jonnu Smith in the overtime. Disaster. And Rodgers had one of his best games in like his last 30. And they find ways to lose. That Jets program is a debacle. It's been a debacle for a long time. Simpsons Fun Day broadcast tonight should be interesting. I'm going to try to check out a few minutes. I don't know if I will. I'm going to try. Monday nights, usually, I got the volume on Monday Night Raw because I'm a pro wrestling fan. Usually watching Raw with the volume up, and I got Monday Night Football to my left. Usually. We'll see. Maybe I feel a little froggy tonight and check out The Simpsons. Appreciate the $50 super chat. Your unbelievable generosity yet again, Terry. It is very much appreciated. All right, so that does it with the draft talk. We have lots of time left. Who knows what's going to happen? These prospects going to move up and down boards. Where do the Patriots land? We'll have to see. Hopefully you enjoyed some of the draft talk since we didn't have a game to recap. We now jump back into the season and look at the Patriots as they get ready for the Arizona Cardinals. We'll be back on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube Live. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Rate and review over at Spotify and Apple Pods. Thank you for all the super chats. Enjoy the football tonight, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Peace.